The topic for today's talk is on dealing with difficult emotions. So we will try to divide this whole topic into different headings, subheadings, such as we will try to understand what is an emotion first, and what are the different kind of emotions, what it means by difficult emotions, and how to recognize difficult emotions and how to deal with difficult emotions. So it looks like much of a flow, and I try to bring in some of the theoretical aspects so that you would be able to grasp what we are actually dealing with or talking about. And then I will also try to speak about some practical things that we will be able to do to overcome or handle these difficult emotions. The first thing is emotion. I think we all know what it means by emotion. We all feel it, we all know it, we are all going through day in and day out. Uh, when we talk about emotion, we always say how you feel, how you uh, how you are at this point in time, and basically when we are trying to talk about emotions, we usually say that emotion agade, which means that do not get anxiety, or do not get fear, or do not get depressed and things like that. But when at a definition point of view, emotion is much more than that. It has certain components to it. One is the cognitive component, and one is a physiological component and the behavioral component. Again, everybody here would be knowing what it means. Basically, if at all we are getting emotional, the first thing that comes to our mind or first comes to us is the tears, which is the physical manifestation of our emotion. If it is a sad emotion, if it is a very happy emotion, the first thing that comes to us is the physiological component of laughter. With along with that, we also think about certain good things, bad things, and also we express our emotions through our body language. Uh, "அகத்தின் அழகு முகத்தில் தெரியும்." This is a very apt quote which is used in emotions when we are talking about emotions, which basically means that whatever emotions you have it at the heart or at the mind, to be more precise, which will be shown in the face. So whenever we are dealing about or talking about emotions, it is not only emotions that what we are in the mind, but it is also about what we are showcasing. Because sometimes we need to suppress some of our emotions and not to show it in overtly at certain places to be more diplomatic or to be more productive. So it's a two-way street where both the things like thoughts and emotions leading to behaviors, and we are trying to control the behavior so that we would be able to control our emotions. So it is a two-way street. Uh, the cognitive component, which is just the subjective feelings, how you actually feel during an emotional state. Uh, when we ask these things to our clients or our friends, how we are feeling at this point in time, they would say that I'm feeling happy, I'm bored, I am irritable, ganta இருக்குது. So they might use so many words to convey the meaning or convey what they are going through. That is the cognitive component, how they are actually feeling. It is not only that, it is also how people appraise their cognitive, appraise their emotions, which is basically that a person who is undergoing a certain emotion, say for example, sadness or happiness, able to understand that he is going through happiness or sadness and able to communicate that. In certain instances, especially in certain disorders, people are not or will not be able to recognize what are the emotions they are going through. For example, a person who is happy, if you ask the person whether what feeling you are going through at this point in time, the person might not be able to recognize that he is happy and able to say it out. But in normal practice, everybody is able to understand what their emotions is and able to communicate to others. And the second thing is the physiological and behavioral component. As I said, whenever we are in a particular emotional state, our brain and the autonomic nervous system, which is basically uh, the nervous system which is connected to our heart, connected to our sweat glands, connected to our muscles, all are connected. And for one particular emotion, certain types of organs are stimulated, or all the organs are stimulated in a sense, and we will be able to see some response in that. For again, for example, if at all the emotion of fear, if it is there in our brain, it will be shown practically in our body, like we would be started shivering, we would be having a lot of sweating, and we would be have very vigilant. Our eyes might be little big, and our pupils might be dilated. So all the things can happen whenever we are having a particular emotional state. And that's why we also say it's like a body language or non-verbal behavior. This is also really important because many a times it's we, even if you are trying to suppress our emotions, it is shown in our body language. The similar way, we can try to recognize other people's emotions by their body language. Many a times when we ask our friends or colleagues or family members how we are feeling, they might say certain things like, I'm happy with, but their body language would show certain the opposite of it. Then we will start asking them, hey, உங்களை பார்த்தா அப்படி தெரியல, மூஞ்சி வேற மாதிரி இருக்கு. So we'll start asking questions about that, and we'll try to understand what they're actually going through and try to help them. So it is always important to understand that emotions and body symptoms or body language goes hand in hand, and both are really important. There are very few basic human emotions. There is happiness, sadness, hate, anger, fear, and love. And that's it. I mean, other than that, we do not have much of basic human emotions. And we also try to experience all these things in a single day. From morning till night, we were happy at some point in time. If we are get stuck in a traffic, we become irritable. And if somebody is praising us, we will become very happy or we will be content. At the same time, if somebody is scolding us for some of the bad things that we are doing, we might feel guilty and sad and hate and anger. These are the common emotions that we go through day by day. But it is not as simple as that. But there are various theories to different kinds of emotions. This is one another theory from Robert, where it's a wheel of emotions, where different emotions that people can go through in their day-to-day activities and in their life too. We also have to understand that most of the time we feel certain emotions. For example, if I ask any one of you at this point in time, what are the emotions that you're going through, you might say that I'm feeling calm, I am feeling happy, or I'm feeling normal. But some of us might be having certain stress in our mind due to something else, maybe the forthcoming examinations or our task that's to be done at some point in time. We might be feeling anxious or guilty. So many aspects can be seen. At this extension of that is the difficult emotions. Uh, Difficult emotions are not completely difficult in a sense that it is not from out of the moon that we have these emotions. Most of the things are continuum from basic emotions, where some of the basic emotions are either very high or either very low. For example, sadness is a very basic emotion that we that we go through day in and day out for certain things. But if that sadness is very much high and it has been there for a very long time, it becomes a difficult emotion. Similarly, anger, similarly, hate, similarly, other things can be a difficult emotion. And many a times we do not feel difficult emotions throughout the day or throughout a week or throughout a month. Sometimes, if there are some stressors which are not able to be resolved, we tend to have difficult emotions for a prolonged time. And as, as our life has taught us, many of the difficult emotions that we are going through are resolved by itself over some point in time. If the stressors has gone, our emotions also become normal and we uh, become normal in a sense that we are going through the normal emotions. But sometimes there are some situations where the stressors are persistent or very long, or it is not, it is not going away. Then we might have difficult emotions for a very long time too. So in those situations, we might seek help from our friends, our colleagues, our family members, and if still not possible, we try to speak with our mental health professionals to get some sort of an insight about it and try to address those things. The next important thing is how we express emotions. This is also really important because the way we express emotions are more like what we have learned over a period in time. For example, if a person is growing in a family where usually the emotions are expressed explicitly by violence, then that child or that young person growing in that family would also learn that, okay, emotions should be expressed in that way. So that person also grows up and start expressing the emotions in that particular way of violence. So it is very critical that how emotions is expressed in a particular family or particular culture or particular uh, country. All these things, all these cultures, society also play a role in determining how a person expresses emotions. Say, for example, if you go to Japan, the way they express emotions is a little different when compared to India, or when you go to USA or UK, the way they express their emotions is a little different. These differences are not individual differences. It is the society has taught them to behave or express emotions in a particular way. And as you all know, or as you are all experiencing right now, the way in which we express emotions has changed over a period in time. When we were a child, the way in which we expressed emotions, for example, sadness or happiness or anger or hunger or whatever, I mean, so not hunger, anger, everything in a different way. For example, as a child, we might have cried for a particular chocolate or a particular object or particular toy, or we might have rolled in the shop to get the toy, or that's how we express our emotions of want, of demand at that point in time. And we express our emotions by say, hugging our parents or siblings or kissing them and things like that. But as they grow a little bit older, as the teens, they express their emotions in a little bit different way. For example, many times the some of the since I work with youth mental health, I tend to hear a lot that parents are not able to understand why or how young people are expressing their emotions. Parents might come and say that I do not know my child is having love towards me because he or she is not at all expressing the emotion of love towards me. But it might not be true, because it is not that the youngster or the adolescent is not having love towards the parents, but the way in which they are expressing the love has changed over a period in time. And parents expecting the children, expecting the adolescent to express emotions as a child, like hugging and kissing, might not be possible. So it is also that parents should also make it, and it's the way in which we express emotions or changes, especially the anger. In the case of adolescence is much different. They might be abusive, or they might act out, they might break things. These kind of things are very common in the teenagers. But when it comes to adults, the way in which they express emotions has changed a little bit more. uh, they will become a little bit mature, in a sense that they will not be able to showcase their expressions immediately at that point in time. For example, if adult working in a factory, if there is a problem with the management or with some other issues, it is not the adult cannot just like that shout at the superior at that point in time. He has to control his anger and express the emotion of disgust uh, or the way or the want or the anger in a way more mature way, like verbally expressing the anger towards the superior rather than showcasing the anger directly. Similar way, we also express the emotions differently to different people. For example, the same kind of a love, if at all we see a young child, we express in a particular way. But if it is a family member, we express it one particular way. The same concept of emotion of love expressed in particular way to a family member, particular way to a friend, particular way to a working colleague, and particular way to others. So our brain are already trained, or our society and our bringing up in this environment has taught us how to express emotions over a different age group and different people. And this differs between one adult to adult, because the way in which they are thought about these things, in which they are seeing these things and grown, differs between one another. And coming back to difficult emotions, we should also understand that why it is important to deal with difficult emotions. Difficult emotions are not only harmful to our mental health. For example, difficult emotions of continuously being sad, continuously being angry, or irritable, and things like that. It is not only having an impact on our mental health and reducing our quality of life, decreasing our productivity, and driving away our friends away from us, and making us less peaceful. Other than that, difficult emotions has an impact on physical health. Chronic or continued difficult emotions can have an impact on our other organs like our heart, like our blood immune system and others, leading to less immunity in us, leading to more infections such as COVID and other things, and having an impact on the heart can make us prone to heart attacks and other hypertension and diabetes and various other non-communicable diseases also. So it is not only the mental health but also physical health. And also it leads to social stresses, which is uh, difficult emotions for a prolonged time make people isolated. Their friends might turn them down. They may not be able to be in a crowd. This leads into one of the very common problems faced these days, the loneliness. It can lead to loneliness, which is having its own ramifications and other problems also. So other than that, academic effects are occupational problems like loss of job, reduced poor performance. These are the other important problems that we face, difficult emotions, and people usually do seek help when these things are happening to them. So it is important to identify the difficult emotions early, that they are going through the emotions and seeking help. Uh, with professionals, not only professionals, but if they are first they can speak with their friends and others to get a hang of it, what they are trying to go through, and then they can definitely seek help from the professionals. Um, Emotional hijacking. Okay, uh, this is what we do every time whenever we are in a stress. It is really an important one or an under life-saving one. For example, you are walking in a road and a dog suddenly try coming towards you to bite you. Before making uh, a cognitive decision to run, the emotion kicks in first. The fear of emotion kicks in first, and you start running before you know that you have started running. This saves life because it is not only here; it has been there with us for a very long time. Even during our evolution, our emotion has saved people for a very long time. So it is very ingrained in our brain. And whenever we are faced with a stressor, our emotion kick starts first and starts acting, and then only our cognition, that is our frontal brain, that is the conscious brain starts acting, and it evaluates the situation and then it decides. Say for example, this also you might, for example, if at all you're walking in a path which is very dark, and if there is some kind of a rope-like structure, the first thing that comes to you is the fear of whether it is a snake, and you start panicking. You might start running, and you might uh, run for say 2 minutes or 5 seconds or 10 seconds, but you and then the cognitive brain, that is the conscious brain, starts acting on it and say that, hey, it might be a rope, or it might, I know that there are no snakes in this place, so I should not be very fearful. Let me go back and check it. Or you will say that, okay, it might not be a rope because it is not moving till time, so it is a rope, so you calm down. So there is a stress, and the emotion immediately kickstarts and start acting on it. But after some point in time, the cognitive brain, the emotion, the conscious brain should act on it, control the emotion, and then you have to take an informed decision. This is the actual path most of the stresses. For example, even at homes, if the children or the partner makes some kind of a issue or mistakes or problems, the first thing that comes to our, the first thing that we do is shout at them or show anger at them. But after some point in time, we think about it, why they have did that, and then you are able to understand that, okay, they have did that because of certain other things. So you are able to understand that, and you are able to understand why the person did that. So, but before that, you have already acted out by using the emotion. So it is important that not to act immediately using the emotion. It is very difficult, easier than said, but it is really important to take a time when there is a stressor, think about the stressor, and then not use the emotion immediately and then act on it, which will lead to much more better outcomes when compared to using only the emotions to react to a stimuli or a stressor. This is what I was trying to say, that Whenever there is a stressor, there are two options. One is to use the emotion, one is to use the cognition. It is very difficult to suppress the activity of the emotion and use only the cognition. Even if you are able, even if the emotion has kick-started, it is up to us to control that emotion at some point in time and start critically thinking about the stresses, and then make the informed decision of or informed acts to control the emotion and do the appropriate activity. This is the core skill that is being taught in emotional intelligence. Okay, we are coming to the next part of our talk is on self-awareness. Before acting on your difficult emotions, you or us must understand that we are going through difficult emotions. We have seen what are difficult emotions. To recapitulate, difficult emotions are not very different from the usual emotions that you go through. For example, if it is sadness, or if it is anger, or if it is guilt, or whatever it is, if it is there for a very long time, and if it is there with much more severity than normal times, and if you are not able to handle that difficult emotion by yourself, then it becomes a problematic emotion, a problematic and difficult emotion. So, but many people are going through it, but still they are not able to recognize that they are going through difficult emotion for a very long time. So the first thing is that we have to introspect and see what are the difficult emotions we are going through. And believe me, many a times we are having some sort of difficult emotions with us, still not able to recognize and still not addressed. And we are not, since we are not able to recognize it, this is having a toll on our health and things like that, but still not acted on. So self-awareness, which is basically to recognize our own feelings. It just needs a little bit of honesty from our side to think about what emotions we are going through at a particular point in time, because it is also not only about dealing about our emotions, it is also about understanding our strengths and limitations. We do not want to dig through our limitations or our shortcomings and to put ourselves in a vulnerable position. We always think about our strengths, but to deal with difficult emotions, first we must also be ready to deal our inadequacies, our shortcomings, so that we are able to recognize what we are first, and then we will be able to build on that for a better future. So say for example, we can try to put down our strengths and our limitations, and then think about what are the things that I need to improve upon, and what are the things that I must already achieved really good. Say for example, here lot of things are there. I have put only the strengths here, but it is also important that to put the limitations of ourselves. More than strengths, we should try to put our limitations also, and try to list them, and try to and have to think about why and how we can improve those our strengths and limitations, because our strengths and limitations are at the base on which our emotions can build on. If at all our strength, if at all we have limitations in dealing with certain things, it will lead on to our difficult emotions, and that can lead to other problems. So understanding our strengths and limitations is the first step towards recognizing our difficult emotions. And second thing is that to self-management, in a sense that whether we will be able to think about our emotions, difficult emotions in a sense, and able to manage that. Because many a times what it is that awareness about one's emotion, especially the, say for example, if somebody comes and tells us that you are an angry person, you are always being angry, and we do not, even though we know that, we will not recognize that, we will not accept that. So we'll say that no, I am not an angry person, I am a very mature person. And unless otherwise we accept certain things, we will not be able to start acting on it. That's the second important step. And then to take initiatives towards that. Many a times, many a times, many of us do know what we are going through, also know what to be done, but the problem is we do not act on it. We all know that we need to be healthy. We all know that we need to do physical activity daily to be stay healthy. But many of us have a difficulty in initiating physical activity daily in a daily basis to improve our physical health in actual. So we have knowledge, we also know that to do it, but at the behavior level, it is difficult for us to actually act on it. In the similar way for the handling the difficult emotions also, we all know that we have certain difficult emotions. We also know that how to act on it and why to act on it, but still we do not act on it. That's a problem with us. And social awareness, it is also not only important to understand our own emotions, but it is also equally important to understand what others are going through also, because without that it is really difficult for us to live in a society. uh, if at all our colleagues or family members are going through something, we have to recognize what the emotions are going through. Other than that, we should also be in a position to recognize how our emotions are affecting others' emotions. Especially in a family setup, we all know that if the head of the family is very angry or very things like that, it invariably affects the other family members. It might affect the children; they might become sad. It might affect the wife. It might become something different. So it is important not only to understand your emotions but also other emotions, and also how your emotions are having an impact on others. Uh, now we have understood about emotions and different type of emotions and why it is important to handle the difficult emotions, and also how to recognize our emotions and how to act on it. Let's end the session by talking about certain simple ways of handling the emotions. Here, I have used the word emotions as such, not difficult emotions, because it is applicable for everything. Even if you are having normal stresses or normal sadness, the same thing that we are trying to understand, the time what we're going to talk about will be applicable, and you will be able to use this to improve your emotions. And it is not that everybody has perfect emotions or perfect matured emotions. Everybody has something to build on, grow up. So you can also use these emotions even if you are not having any difficult emotions. The first thing, as I said earlier, is the acceptance. People have many a times recognize their problems, or they recognize their difficult emotions, recognize their uh, difficult negative coping mechanisms, but they do not accept that they are having that, and even if they accept that, they do not act on it. These are the two major issues when it comes to not acting on or not able to change. So the first mechanism is to start thinking about your difficult emotions and accept as such that your strengths are this, your limitations are that. So once you are accepted that you are having these kind of issues or these kind of difficult emotions, then you would be a little bit more compassionate to yourself. That okay, I am having these issues, because of that I am doing these bad things. Okay, let me correct my difficult emotions so that I will not be a burden to others. So you will be more compassionate towards, and it also leads to compassionate to others. And once you have accepted it and once you have decided to act on it, then it is easy for you to formalize some plans, or formalize or speak with your colleagues or speak with mental health professionals to make sure that how to change from one difficult emotion to a normal emotions. The second thing is practicing gratitude. Many a times, these difficult emotions within us are arising because of the thing that we are victimized, that we are vulnerable, or we are only being not good performing better in life, or life is very unfair to us. These are certain thoughts that comes to us and gives us very difficult emotions like guilt, sadness, and things like that. But we also has to practice gratitude that it is not true. We also have some good things happening in our life day to day basis. We should try to start counting our good things that have happened to us in a daily basis and feel gratitude for that, feel grateful for that. This content in life, this happiness, this content that hey, I am also doing good in life, some good things are happening to me, is a very powerful tool which will help you to deal with your dissipate your difficult emotions or very problematic emotions of guilt, anger, sadness. And usually we would ask them or ask people to start a journal. Take a small diary, a small piece of paper, and at everyday night we would ask them to think about what are all the good things that have happened to you at that point in time. Even if it is very simple things, very small things, like if somebody said thank you to you that you did very small act of kindness. Somebody said thank you to you. That is a that's a good thing to happen to you. If at all you made very small progress in your job, somebody you made one good solution for certain things, feel free for that and write it down that you have did something good on that day and something good has happened to you. If this kind of journal maintaining will give you a very good emotion to you, and then it will make you grow better. Why we are doing this is that whenever we are trying to remove a difficult emotion, that is not, there will be a void, we have to fill that void. So whenever we are having difficult emotion, at the same time we are having very good emotions, this cannot go hand in hand. So this very good emotion, the better emotions will take uproot the your difficult emotions and try to place themselves in that position. By this you will be able to do better things. And one another important technique is the mindfulness technique, which basically means that asking you to be in the moment at that point in time. For example, at this moment, I am talking to you, and if at all I am thinking about the deadlines that I have for tomorrow, then I would be a little bit anxious at this point in time. Hey, I have to talk. If I start thinking about it, then I might not be able to talk to you properly. I might be going very fast, missing certain points, and I might be, and you will, and you, by this time you might have noted that I am very anxious. So I am not thinking about my future, what is the deadlines and things. At the same time, I'm not thinking about my past. Hey, my pet, I lost my pet last month. I am very sad about it. I am not thinking about that also. If I start thinking about that at this point in time, I might be very sad, not interested to talk with you, and you will be able to recognize that also. So mindfulness is basically what I am right now at this point in time, trying to have a wrap around my emotions and trying to do what is I am doing at this point in time. Um, I'm not going to actually tell about the detail about mindfulness. There are many wonderful YouTube. I mean, if you go to YouTube or other resources, there are very many videos and exercises where you will be able to do mindfulness. But these are the basic principles. One thing is that you have to find a spot. This is and again, this is not meditation. This is not that you should be doing mindfulness at one point in time. Mindfulness is doing whatever you are doing at any point in time, but doing very consciously on that activity. For example, if at all you're going to, if at all, if any one of you was having a coffee right now, think about the think about how good the coffee is, how hot it is, how sweet it is, how the smell of the coffee is. Try to be immersed on what you are doing at that point in time and think about it rather than drinking coffee by thinking something else, drinking coffee and thinking about what dinner you're going to have. Because being at that point, at that moment, will be much more meaningful than the other things. So again, you can try to do mindfulness, but as I said, this exercise is just one aspect of it. But mindfulness basically means that doing activities mindfully, whatever activity that you are doing at any point in time. And another important thing is that it is, instead of being reactive, being proactive. This, it is really important. Many a times, for the stressors that we are facing in our life, we are very reactively acting towards it. We do not sit down and think about why that problem has arisen, what are the ways in which it could be dealt. Rather than that, we just act by emotions, not by our mind or cognition. So be proactive rather than reactive. Take up the problem, break the problem into very smaller bits, and try to think about why the problem has arisen, and think about what are the ways you can handle the smaller. If at all you keep the problem as very big, it is very unsurmountable. It might be very difficult for you to handle. But if you break a big problem into smaller chunks, you will be able to handle the smaller chunks and you will be very successful in handling the bigger problem. And okay, I think this is the last but one slide. As I said, I'll just recap everything. Difficult emotions or negative emotions are really important because it has an impact on our mental health, physical health, our social health, and also our professional health. So it is important. Second point is it is uh, negative emotions are not very different from normal emotions. It is the normal emotions like sadness, anger, guilt, and other things has in a much higher proportion and being there for a very longer time. Recognizing negative emotions and difficult emotions is the most important thing that we must be doing right now, to think about what are all the negative emotions that we are going through, and then accepting that we are going through these emotions and trying to address those emotions by various mechanisms like like following gratitude, like following mindfulness, and like asking for professional help when we are not able to address that by ourselves or by asking friends. And another important thing is about being not being reactive, not being reactive to situations, not using the emotions as the first line of act when there is a stress or whatever it is, but to think about what is happening and using our cognition and trying to act in a more mature way is the most important thing that is needed. And believe me, this is a habit, and this will not happen over a period in a one day. It is not going to happen. You should be a little bit patient with yourself and try to practice that each and every day. And in 1 month or 2 month time, you would be a much better person, and you would be able to handle things much better in your emotions. I think I will stop it right here. And thank you so much for your audience and patient listening. And I would be happy to take any questions that you have at any point in time. Thank you. Over to Divakar and Tad.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. It was a wonderful session. We have few questions by attendees here. Just so Suganti has asked a question here. So she has asked, like, what is the difference between emotion and feeling?
Um, There is, I mean, from psychology point of view, I think there is not much a difference between what is being an emotion, what is being a feeling. Feeling is more subjective, what you actually feel, and emotion is more a construct. What, uh, mm, yeah, it's a emotion is more a how to put it. Yeah, more a concept from the psychology rather than anything else. For example, how you feel at this point in time, we will say the same answer like I feel happy, I feel stressed, and things like that. But when you ask what is the emotion that you are going through, then we'll say I am the emotion is anger, the emotion is sadness, the emotion is guilt. uh, in a sense that feeling is the how you subjectively talk about emotions. Maybe I can think of right now, but there is not much a difference between an emotion and a feeling. Basically, it means one and the same, at least to me. I mean, I might be wrong, but I think that's it.
Okay, okay. Yeah. So the second question is from Sabapati. So he has asked, are emotions based only on our experiences? For example, he says, like, I have I have never encountered a snake, but I have fear associated with snakes.
Okay, thanks. That's a very interesting question, and a very thoughtful question too. Uh, we are all humans, and we are evolved to this state, which basically means that we have acquired knowledge over a very long period in time, and these are all ingrained in our brain, and it is not going to go away. Not at the cognitive level, at the very spinal level. Uh, for example. Uh, That's how it is, because it is going to save us, because it is not 100 years or 200 years. If you go back, people are living in villages or living in forests, and snakes are everywhere. And if a person has to run after seeing a snake, thinking about that it is a snake, and then it will bite me and I will die after that if it bites me, and then I have to run for that, if that whole process is going to take time, and then by the time the snake would have bitten him. So the emotion has helped us survive these kind of situations. And we ran immediately after seeing the snake. And after some point in time, we might think back and say that, okay, this is not a very deadly snake because it's not a poisonous snake. So it happens over a period in time. But that has, this is only for animals. This is mainly for certain animals. But for example, if at all you are a dog lover, and you are with a dog for a very long time and you have been very comfortable with dogs, even if you're walking on a street, if there is a street dog, you might not run away seeing that. But if at all you are grown up in a childhood times like that, if a dog has bitten you when you are very young, that experience is within you. And whenever you see a dog in a street and things like that, you'll be a little bit fearful. Okay, what it might bite. Even you know, but you know that street dog is somewhere sitting somewhere. It is so thin, it is not even able to get up. But even then, you know that your emotion kickstarts it first, and then after 2 or 3 seconds or 5 seconds, you will tell to yourself, hey, do not get panicky, the dog is somewhere out there, I am sitting in my Audi car, how it will going to come and bite me. But it is not so. So that's how our brain saves us from a lot of time. But this has we have extended this to our day-to-day practice, and sometimes it affects us. So if every time you go into our office there is a rope and you start shouting that, hey, snake, snake, and snake, and things like that, that is not going to be helpful. But it is there to protect us. But sometimes we have to stop that, overpower that through our cognition also.
Okay. That's like more or less like our brain being very proactive.
Yes, our brain is a supercomputer. It is already programmed with a lot of things. For example, if you go, I mean, I don't know how many are married. If you go into your home and uh, and you see your wife and she is not sitting in a posture which is not conducive at all, your brain has already programmed that, okay, she is not in a good mood. Let me not ask coffee today morning, today evening. Let me go and put the coffee for myself. So the brain is such a fantastic organ. It takes cues and it registers certain things and uses it whenever it is needed. So yeah, as you said, as rightly put, yes, it is being proactive and it saves us from wife and from snake.
Interesting. So we have another question from a person called Gayatri Srinath. So she's asking, what is reptilian brain?
Okay, more or less what I'm talking about right now is the reptilian brain. Okay, our brain has a cortex, I mean, which is the frontal lobe, which is the most developed part of the brain, and we have the brainstem and things like that, which is the hind brain. This hindbrain is evolutionarily conserved because if you take the hindbrain, the reptilian brain of a reptile and ours, you will see very much similarities.
Mhm.
But the only difference is that the reptile has only the reptilian brain and it acts by it. But for us, above the reptilian brain, we have the cortical brain.
Mhm.
This cortical brain is having a control over the reptilian brain. The reptile can do whatever it want to do because there is no cortex and it is not saying that, hey, you are in a bus, you cannot sit on the floor, you have to stand and things like that. But a reptile can sit on the bus, sit on your car, whatever it can do. So the cortex is the one thing that is evolved over a period in time and it controls our reptilian brain.
Mhm.
This reptilian brain is very powerful. As I said earlier, if our reptilian brain is helping us, whenever we see a lion, this reptilian brain acts on it and suddenly it starts running. But you also know that the lion is within the cage.
Mhm.
And it says that, hey, reptilian brain, listen to me. The lion is within a cage. It is not going to affect you. So do not run. So this thing is a difference between the reptilian brain. Again, as I said, reptile, most of the things that we do uh, intuitively. For example, as I said, running away from a snake or the breathing. You are not consciously breathing. You are not for each thing. You are not conscious that let me. I have to inspire and expire, inspire and expire. It is taken care of by the reptilian brain. It does things like that. Heart rate and invariably the hunger. Lot of things are taken care of the reptilian brain, but the cortical brain is there to ask the reptilian brain not to do certain things in certain social situations. And
Okay.
it also says that, hey, do this particular activity at this point in time. So this is again, again an interesting question, but it has evolution is really a cool subject. If you can think about evolution and all our behaviors are evolutionarily conserved and evolutionarily it has some implications. I hope I have answered the question.
Yeah. Yes, doctor. So I have another question from Sabah. So he's asking, oftentimes I'm not even aware that I'm going through negative or difficult emotions. So controlling it becomes an issue. How do I become aware of the emotions?
Okay. Okay. It's a very practical question. Good. First thing is that we have to understand that we will be having some negative emotion at some point in time. That's the first thing.
Mhm.
I mean, invariably, it's like checking our petrol at every day, in a sense that we will try to see, okay, whether the petrol is there. We know that it might be there or it might not be there, but we have to check it every day.
Okay.
Similar way, think that you will be having or you might be having negative emotions at any point in time. So make sure an activity to check yourself every day that whether I have an emotion, negative emotion or not. That's the first point of it. To check, to have a reminder that check for negative emotions today, and that's the first point. Second point is to be to know what emotions, negative emotions that are going through. This needs little bit of, as I said, more uh, honesty from your side and some time from your side.
Mhm.
You have to sit with yourself and think about what are all the emotions that you have gone through on particular day, and think about what is the predominant emotion that you have gone through on the particular day. For
Mhm.
example, whether you have been totally angry from morning till evening. But as humans, we do not want to be seen as a very bad person. So invariably, when you try to sit down at say at night and think about what are all the bad emotions that you have gone through or difficult emotions you've gone through,
Mhm.
and you think and you see that the anger has been a one important thing, and because of your anger, so many people are affected. But
Mhm.
when you write it down, we will not never write it down. We will never acknowledge that we have, because that makes us a bad person. That
Okay.
makes us that we have become. So the first thing is the honesty
Mhm.
and thinking that, okay, let me be honest with me. Yes, I am a bad person. I have been a bad boy. I mean bad person. It's not about bad person. I have done some bad things by bad emotions I have been gone through.
Mhm.
So noting it down. The other way to do things is that some people have checklist of things, like these are the important emotions that is really important in life, and checking that whether I have gone through every day.
Mhm.
Okay, today I have ticked happiness, sadness, and things like that, and they have a log every day for the next 1 week,
Mhm.
so that every day they tick the emotions, and at the end of 1 week they will see that, hey, of most of the times in the week I have been happy,
Mhm.
which means that you are in a good mental health state or a good emotional state. That is a reassuring to yourself. That is a more objective way of things. And one another way is to have buddies, asking your friends to evaluate yourself at some point in time. Hey, you have been, say for example, Divakar is my friend, and I have been working with him for the past, say, 1 month or 2 months or whatever it is. I could ask him, Divakar, just let me know if I am. Let me know what you think about my emotional state for the past 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And ask him to be honest with me.
Okay.
And if he's a truthful friend to me, and he will say that, hey, you have been a good thing, but these are the things that have happened that is not very good to me. You have did certain things like this.
Mhm.
You could have done better at that point in time. That emotion has affected others. So having a friend to tell about your negative emotions is one. And especially parents are, especially when you are young, parents are really great people who are able to identify the difficult emotions you are going through. Even if you're alone, even if you are not talking to them, they will say that you are going through something. this is bad is happening, but taking help from others to recognize your emotions is also one another important way of. And you should also understand that there is not only one ideal way of recognizing your negative emotions. You should use as many ways of recognizing this. One, as I said, you itself recognizing it. Second one is using checklists to recognizing your emotions. Third is using friends or your partners, your relationship partners, to ask them to evaluate you is one another way of recognizing things. And so that all the mechanisms, all the different interventions will help you rather than using only one kind of an mechanism to identify emotions. But for that, you should be a little bit open enough to let people talk about your emotions sometimes. And we should not get angry with other people saying that, hey, you have been a very grumpy boy for the past 2 weeks. And then we should, hey, then you should fight with that person. That you should be in a way to take it. You should be in a position to take that advice or take that statement with a little bit more maturity also. I think that is.
So I hope that has helped Sabha.
Yeah.
So I have the next question. We'll take. We have another 3 or 4 questions. So
Okay.
try and wrap it up as quickly as possible. So the next question is from Eugenio. He's asking, is mindfulness is the same as the effort to concentrate?
Okay. It is little different. While concentration basically means that we are doing a particular activity, for example, reading, for a very prolonged time. With we are fixing our attention on the studies itself. That is one way of that is concentration for us. But mindfulness is how the book feels, how the words are, how eloquently it is written, and the ambience, taking into consideration all the other aspects of it, the physical aspects of it, and then trying to imbibe along with what you are trying to do, makes it mindfulness. For example, I could be concentrating on my studies for a very long time, but I may not be aware of how beautiful the pages were, how nicely the printed were. Because why it is important is that these things add value. By concentration, you might be fatigued. There might be a lot of fatigue. But these kind of auxiliary aspects, for example, sitting in a quiet library, the feeling of quietness along with concentration makes it much, much better. Rather than studying only about what is written on the text, like only the content of it, content of what you are trying to read is not going to be much fun. But taking into considerations other things also. Uh, Maybe concentration and mindfulness are interlinked. When you are mindful, you might be doing much more concentration because it is making the study. I'm giving an example of an studying because it's easy to understand, making it more enjoyable, making it less fatigable, making concentration much more prolonged, making the memory better. So mindfulness and concentration are interlinked at some point in time, and but it is also has some causal effects also. This leading to mindfulness leading to much more concentration also. uh, to better way to say mindfulness, and mindfulness is how each, and for example, when you are listening to, for example, when Divakar talks to me, it is not only about what he says but how he says, concentrating on how he sits. Those things also goes into the taking into consideration about these things also, and making it much better than just what he says. When I concentrate only on what he says, it becomes really difficult. I hope that answers Eugenia.
Yeah. So the next question is person called Chandra has asked, what is the difference between react and response?
Okay. Uh, React is what we immediately do for a particular situation. And it is mostly controlled by the the reptilian brain. I don't want to go into the brain stem, things like that. Reaction is what immediately that you do for a particular act. For example, if you are touching a stove or a hot plate, You react by taking the hand out of it. That's a reaction, which is we also have a knee-jerk reaction, which is just if you do this, you just take the that's just a reaction. Response is thinking about what the problem is and responding to it in a more logical way. I will give another example. For example, a child is failed in an examination. We react by scolding the child or hitting the child. That is a reaction. Because when we see F in our child's report card, the first thing that comes to us is the reaction of hitting anger and hitting the child. But the response should be something else. So when you see it, you should respond in such a way that you should understand why the child has gone through that. It might be because of us that the fail has failed in the examinations. We are seeing serial from night till 1 o'clock at 9 o'clock at night. We are not concentrating on the child. Child failed because of that. But if at all we want to make a response, we have to think about it. We have to know why it has happened, how it has happened, and what could be rectified for that. But it is really difficult. At initial times, our emotions are being hardwired in our brain. It actually kickstarts without us telling us to kickstart. It actually happens by itself. But by some sort of an exercise or habit or training, we will be able to control our emotions, reacting emotions, and then we will be able to look at the problem in a more matured way or a more logical way and try to address that by responding to it in a better way. So I would say reaction as an immediate effect, but response as a late effect. But our idea is to make our response as the primary effect rather than the reaction. This shift needs time, but energy, and more activity and more exercise. But if at all we're able to do that, this is one of the important things that we can achieve in life, because this leads to a lot of good things.
Okay.
Chandra, hope it answers your questions.
Yeah. So in continuation with that, slightly a different situation here. Josephine has asked, in a unjust situation, how to handle with an angry or a difficult emotion?
Uh, okay, this is a difficult question in a sense that any utopian society, any democratic society should be giving you the leeway to get angry at any unjust situation. That should be the way. But sometimes the society is not perfect, and sometimes even if it is unjust happening in front of you, the society asks you to think about it and do a logical activity, logical way of responding to it. Sometimes it may not be the best way, but that's how the society is built. For example, someone is hitting some other person. For example, a husband is hitting a wife in the household in nearby you, and you know that, and it is unjust. But we cannot, and we get anger towards that. But we cannot just go and hit the husband for the wife's sake. That's not the way it is constructed. The society has given us certain mechanisms to let out our anger through complaining to a police, or speaking with the wife and asking her to complain about it, or making a call to the social welfare and things like that. That's how we try to react to it. But having said that, larger problems like corruption, larger problems like inequality and things like that needs anger. It needs anger, and it needs act through anger. Here anger is a good one, and we should not think that anger is always bad. All are emotions, all are important emotions. We need all the emotions at some point in time, but what emotion at what point in time is the question. Here unjust means anger is a good emotion, we should be using anger. But if it is the same anger but in a position where we are trying to hit a son or daughter or for something else, that is a bad emotion. So there is nothing like good or bad emotion. It is the situation also plays a role to make a good emotion good and bad. uh, I hope I conveyed in such a way that I'm politically correct.
So yeah, that's a tough thing to answer
Yeah.
today. Doctor. So the next question here is, um, I'm just combining a couple of questions here together.
Okay.
Gayatri Srinath has asked a question, say, uh, are there any negativities with being mindful? And she has also asked another question, must all emotions be expressed?
Okay. First, for the first question, yes. Mindfulness, the negative things to mindfulness uh, in certain situations. I mean, I won't say in a day-to-day practice, normal people, but in certain disorders, we do not recommend mindfulness because it takes a lot of energy from the person to be mindful at some point in time. Uh, Having said that, many a times mindfulness is important. Mindfulness can be used, and mindfulness is protective at many a times. Coming to the second question of whether whether all the emotions to be expressed, uh, we do not do that, and we do not have a position to do that. We mean, if at all we start expressing all our emotions at all point in time, at any point in time, at any person, at any time, then there is nothing like a society. I mean, the society was constructed so that humans can control their emotions. It is not the other way around. Uh, Again, something might be controversial and things like that. The whole construct of society, the human, this all things are to control our emotions so that we can all channel our emotions in a particular way so that we can all live harmoniously without hitting one another, killing one another. If it is not so, then for example, you take a pack of wolves. They have emotions. They might have the emotion of anger, emotion of love. If at all they feel emotion, they mate, they beget babies. If at all they are angry, they hit one another, they fight with one another. If at all they are hungry, they kill the deer and eat it. So here the emotions are not controlled, but here we are controlled in ourselves because the society says that, hey, if at all you are going to do something like that, I'm going to put you in jail. So our emotion is controlled. Hey, if at all you are going to hit your child, the child is going to call the human services and you are going to put in jail. Controlled. So everywhere we are checkpoints because the society has constructed. This is not only at the society level, at the occupation level, at the family level, and even at the individual level. So everywhere checkpoints are there, and if at all we start, we truly speaking, we are not able to express our emotions truly at all point in time, which is good for a society, for a collective society. It is really good. At a very individual level, we should be expressing our emotions. Uh, if it is, if they're really good emotions, but if it is going to be of some negative emotions to other people or to yourself, it is best to control them and channel them in a better way. It is not that I'm not saying that you should, for example, you should not get angry at all, but channeling angry in such a way that it will be leading to some productive outcomes is the way to go forward. Hope it answers some aspects of it. Again, these are really intelligent questions. I think this is not, I mean, a great forum to discuss certain aspects which might be a little tricky to answer also.
Understand, Doctor. So we've already passed 6:05. So I'm just taking a last two questions. Sorry if I couldn't ask anybody else's question. So Gautam has asked, could you please throw some light on negative emotions and its impact on one's memory over a time?
Okay, interesting question again. Memory and emotions are interconnected. Uh, in our 11th standard, we might have all studied differential calculus. Nobody remembers that today.
Absolutely.
And because we have no emotion of connected with learning a differential calculus, because it is of no emotion, it has no emotional value to me. But we all remember the on the same 11th standard how we all sat with our friends during the lunchtime and ate lunch, and we can still remember that the fight we had with our friends at 11th standard.
Mhm.
The same, both the things are memory. Learning differential calculus is memory, and the memory of you fighting with your friend is also memory. Both are, but one has gone, but one is still stuck with it, because with this differential calculus there is no emotion attached to it. But with this memory of fighting with your friend, the emotion of sadness, guilt, betrayal is attached with it. So the memory is not going. So whenever we ask a person, I mean, I'll say from the good point of view, whenever we ask certain people to think about studies, they are not able to remember things or not able to remember what they have studied. What we recommend them is that use some sort of an emotion attached with the studies that you are trying to do right now, so that it sticks with your memory better. For example, if you are studying about say uh, mm, how to say say about mental health, think about some of the very emotional things that you have gone through associated with mental health. For example, one of your friends attempted suicide, or some of your family members are not mentally ill and things like that. When you're thinking about it and reading the material and saying that, hey, this is what that person is going through, or if at all that person has committed suicide because of these things, the material that you are reading, which is theoretical aspect of it, will stick with that emotion of reading with the uh, sadness or whatever it is, and it will stick. In a negative aspect of it is the PTSD, for example, post-traumatic stress disorder. Here also, people are in war zones, they're killing one another and things like that. Here, the killing one person is a memory, but along with that, there is fear. So these two things are combined together and it sticks with your memory. And after the war, post-war, the army people are coming back. They should have forgotten about their killing other people at some point in time, say 5 years or 10 years. But it is still not going away because of the fear attached with the emotion of fear attached with the memory of someone killing in the war field, the war zone. So to take away this memory, first we need to unchain the memory and the emotion, then only the memory will go away. I think this is very similar with our relationships also, our romantic relationships. We remember each and every aspect of romantic முதல்ல எந்த படத்துக்கு போனோம், முதல்ல எங்க சாப்பிட்டோம், everything we will remember. But after the breakup, someone will come and ask us, I need to forget that person. It is not if it is like differential calculus, you do not have any emotions with the memory, you will forget the next day. There is nothing like that. But here there is the memory, along with that the emotion of romance or emotion of love, all attached with us memory. And it is not easy to remove this memory from the person without breaking. Or that's why we say that after some point in time the love for the person will go away. After that only the memory will go away. So that's in other emotions also. Even if it is anger and things like that, we tend to remember certain memory which is associated with the memory. Shame is one of the very common emotions attached with our memory. We remember our shameful days. If it is something shameful happened to us, we remember very explicitly rather than the the praise. Someone is praising you, that thing will not stick with us. But somebody shamed us, that thing will stick with us for a very long time. So memory and emotions are hand go in hand. We should be in a position to use this link to our advantage rather than to our disadvantage. Hope that makes some clarity.
It does. It does, Doctor. So I think we are well past 6:15 now. So
Okay.
we will. We have three more questions, but due to time limitation, I'm not taking it. So it was a wonderful session, Doctor. You know, I'm expressing our sincere gratitude uh, to you, Doctor, for this wonderful interactive session on dealing with difficult emotions. I'm sure that we have all got in-depth understanding on this topic. Okay, and we look forward to have more such sessions with you, Doctor. Thanks to all the attendees participating. Without you, this session wouldn't have been really engaging. Thank you. This webinar has been possible with continuous support of the team members of WellBeWork and International Institute of Psychotherapy. I express my sincere gratitude to both WellBeWork and International Institute of Psychotherapy team members for putting together this Wellbe Wednesdays webinar series. Thank you all. We will have our next session on 27th January, Wednesday 2021, and we will all send out to you the registration links soon. Thank you all. It was wonderful having you this evening.